When you play the Game of Thrones,
Subscribe and like.
you die. There is no middle ground.
Welcome back to the Grease Goblins YouTube channel. Today's video, we are going to be talking about, did Aerys the Mad King actually do anything wrong? This hot take came from a show that me and Ricky did last week on his channel, and we talked about it briefly, but I wanted to kind of talk about it a little bit more on the channel in the actions of Aerys Targaryen, because you can justify some of his actions, but at the same time, I don't think you can say he did nothing wrong. I did a whole series about this on Robert's Rebellion, and really the first 3 videos were really just an Aerys character analysis, where I was deep diving into the psychology of the character and why he became the person that he did. So when talking about Aerys, and we're going to kind of sum it up here, is Aerys II was somebody that, he was a relatively normal, I would say guy growing up, right? We didn't see any of this madness or any of those things. He was somebody that had big dreams when he became king. He wanted to expand the boundaries of the wall and of Westeros and all of that kind of stuff. He was somebody that had these big dreams that really couldn't be executed all that well. And so that's why Tywin was such a great hand, because Tywin was more of a realist who was actually able to rule. Aerys wasn't really great at actually ruling. That's what makes him not a great king. And so Aerys, in a lot of ways, when we get to his actions, closer to Robert's Rebellion, he's had a number of things that have caused him to go off the deep end. The first one of those comes from Tywin and Aerys being jealous of him and getting all the praise for Aerys's reign. And then you also have Varys, who's telling all these secrets to Aerys, right? He's basically ratting people out here and there. And something we see in A Clash of Kings, Varys does this kind of same thing with Tyrion, telling Tyrion who is maybe doing treason and who is talking about treason and all these things. And it kind of almost goes to Tyrion's head in a way. Like, Tyrion's just like, we don't need to be acting on every whisper that's being said in the streets. And that's something that I think Aerys might have started out as, but as the years go by and you have Varys whispering in your ear all the time and Varys gaining influence more and more and more, that seemed to eventually get to Aerys, where he became very, very distrustful. Now, he doesn't become Aerys the Mad King really until Duskendale. Duskendale is where Aerys is more or less betrayed. He's trapped, and that's where he goes off the deep end. He becomes the Mad King in a lot of ways. And so now skipping to Robert's Rebellion, the first major actions that we see Aerys, do that people point to, yeah, that wasn't a great action, is we see that Aerys actually takes Brandon Stark prisoner. Now, I think this is completely justified. I will defend Aerys in terms of actually imprisoning Brandon Stark. Now, was it a great political move? No. But in terms of, okay, Brandon Stark comes to King's Landing and is trying to basically kill Rhaegar. He openly threatens Rhaegar and tells him to come out and die over the alleged kidnapping of Lyanna. Brandon didn't even know, the full story. He was apparently told the story that he believes right away and comes to King's Landing. There's a whole theory about Littlefinger being the one that told Brandon that. Really love the theory. I do consider that to be probably what happened here. But Brandon Stark is then imprisoned. Well, Aerys then calls for Rickard Stark to come to the south and answer for his son's crimes. Well, that doesn't go so well because he also imprisons Rickard Stark as well. Now, this is where I just don't think this is justified at all. Rickard Stark does no actions that should say he should be, arrested and all this stuff. And so there's then deemed a trial by combat. And this is not a trial by combat at all. This is basically torture, and I'm watching as Brandon and Rickard are killed, more or less. This is completely unjustified. If you want to say that Brandon Stark is guilty of death because of the treasons and the threats that he made towards Rhaegar, the prince at this point, fine. But doing it in the way that Aerys did it, and also killing Rickard, in my opinion, is just, it's unacceptable. So I think right away the first action of saying, oh, Aerys was justified to do this stuff, I just think that falls flat in my opinion personally. And then Aerys goes even a step further. He then wants the heads of Robert Baratheon and Ned Stark. They are teenagers at this point. What treason were they doing? Especially Robert. Robert had nothing to do with what the Starks were doing. And I am a big person that believes that Aerys probably felt pressured because of this northern alliance that was building. It seemed like almost against him. I don't think it was necessarily to take over the throne, any of those things, but I felt like it was a defensive maneuver, a defensive pact, very similar to World War I, where you had all these different alliances, and all it took was one incident to set each other at odds, right? Picking sides because of your alliances and all of those things. That's kind of what happens here. And so Robert Baratheon and Ned basically being asked to be killed and sent to King's Landing and all that stuff is just crazy. It's not justified at all. You can't justify it to me in any regard at all. And that's not even considering the horrible things that Aerys did to his wife, Rhaella. Again, I don't really feel like you can justify Aerys in terms of a lot of his actions later in his life. I mean, you can see the rationale between a lot of the stuff he does with, like, Brandon Stark, for instance, but I don't know. Like, you can't really go further than that. And I will say another thing. Aerys going to Harrenhal. I think he's completely justified to do that as well. Rhaegar seemed to be planning a coup against his father, which I don't blame Rhaegar, seeing the state of his father. But of course Aerys is going to try and stop those things, hearing that from Varys. He's completely justified and within his own rights to stop all this political maneuvering that was going on at the time. And so that's the thing, I think, if you're Aerys, right? You have the prince, who seems to be plotting against you. You have a northern coalition that are almost completely isolating themselves away from you. You have Tywin, who their relationships were definitely sour, and most of that was because of Aerys himself. But you look at all those things and you go to get and you put it together, and it's like, I just don't think Aerys is really justified. Like, can you understand why he becomes the person that he is? Can you understand some of his actions? Yes, right? All of that is there. And I would highly recommend checking out my series on Robert's Rebellion, especially specifically the Aerys part of it, if you do enjoy this video. But that's my conclusion. I think a very big hot take to say that Aerys was justified and did nothing wrong, especially in Robert's Rebellion, and especially in his actions against his wife. But thank you guys all for watching. I'll see you guys all in the next one. Bye, guys.